Everyone's chasing the same few bottles, and in the process, they're ignoring the better ones.
It's true. Hype is loud, but good, honest bourbon usually isn't. Today, we're not chasing anything. We're just looking at the bottles that are already on the shelf that you can actually buy and absolutely should be.
After tearing down some of the most overrated bourbons, we are going to talk about the ones that we believe truly deserve your attention and your money. So stay tuned right here
In the lounge with Stave and Slide.
All right, so let's start with a foundational rule. Good bourbon isn't always rare.
No.
In fact, it usually isn't. Most of the time, it's sitting right there on the shelf waiting for you. No lines, no lotteries, no secondary market nonsense.
Yeah, these bottles, people often overlook these because they're too familiar. They're too affordable, or maybe they're not trending on social media.
Right.
In our opinion, that's a huge mistake.
Of course. We're going to kick it off with undeniable king of value, in our opinion. It's one we talk about a lot. It's one we love to make cocktails with. It pulls double duty. You can drink it neat. You can mix it up, and I think it's one of the best values in bourbon, and that's Wild Turkey 101. Mm-hmm. We talked about the 8-year version back in our under $50 episode, but people just take the standard 101 for granted because it's always there. It's always available, and that's exactly why I think it's a legend.
Yeah, it has everything a great bourbon needs. It's got proof, structure, it's well balanced. Again, I think we talked probably about this before as well, but it's their classic 75% corn, 13% rye mash bill. It's bottled at that perfect 101 proof. Mm-hmm. Stands up well to everything. It carries a bold, spicy character, and it's really the benchmark for what a good Kentucky bourbon is supposed to be.
For sure. It's one of the few bourbons that has, it's never been, I think, dumbed down for the market,
Yep.
And it's an icon for a reason.
Yeah, I agree. Again, it's been around forever, and it's probably one of the names when someone says bourbon that jumps to the forefront of somebody's mind.
Yep.
Yeah. So moving on, their next bottle is another pillar of consistency, I would say, and it's Old Forester 100.
Yep.
We kind of crowned this our ultimate everyday sipper back in episode 2, and it definitely it earns its reputation, I would say. This is a bottle that we would reach for if we just want a fantastic, reliable bourbon without having a whole conversation about it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's a huge compliment to it. It comes out of Brown-Forman, of course, with that 18, I know we got into it before, but that 18% high rye mash bill, bottled at 100 proof, Old Forester 100. You get that brown sugar, that hint of cherry, and that classic Old Forester banana note. Mm-hmm. It works neat. It works in cocktails, just like Wild Turkey 101. It just works.
Yeah, absolutely. The banana note obviously is a fan favorite. Now, for a bottle that proves how much hype can distort value, yep. I think this whole line, this whole label, kind of gets a bad rap. But specifically, we're talking about Old Granddad Bonded. In our last episode, we talked about how Basil Hayden's is basically just watered down, overpriced Old Granddad.
For sure.
This is what you should be buying instead.
Absolutely. It's not twice the price for half the whiskey. It's that same high rye mash bill, right? That comes out of bean, 27% rye, but it's bottled at 100 proof, as required by the Bottled in Bond Act, which we love. You get all that beautiful spice character that Basil Hayden strips away, when they make it that legally allowable amount of proof to be called bourbon, right?
Yeah, right.
And for about half that price, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, absolutely. Now let's move to a brand that's been fighting decades of a bad reputation, and one I don't think we have ever, that I can recall, mentioned on the channel.
I don't think so.
And there's going to be some folks that come at us for including it in a discussion about bourbon, but we're talking about Jack Daniels. Specifically, Jack Daniels single barrel proof. For years, people kind of have dismissed Jack Daniels as the party whiskey, right? For good reason. I mean, that's in our younger days, college days, back in the dorms, in our early days in the military, Old Number 7 was prevalent, right?
Yeah, it absolutely has that reputation for a reason, and it's earned it.
It's earned it.
Yeah.
Yep. But the whiskey that they're putting out now, above and beyond Old Number 7, of course, is probably some of the best in the country. It's won several awards in the last few years. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah. This bottle is proof. It's our classic mash bill, but that barrel proof, it comes in. I mean, those barrel proofs come in like 120 plus, and it's that utilizes that charcoal filtering process, creates this incredible profile of just toasted marshmallow, that banana, rich oak. It's shockingly good.
Yeah, and for under $50, it might be the most underrated bottle on the list. People's prejudice against brand names often will make them miss out on a phenomenal whiskey.
Agree.
I'm guilty of it. Not necessarily with Jack Daniels, although I'm not a frequent purchaser. I have a few. But you've probably heard me say on the channel before, Jim Beam makes some great products, as long as it doesn't say Jim Beam on the label.
Most of the time, right?
But I say that, and I bring this up because we were at Jim Beam last fall, and we tried a couple of things, and one of them was the Jim Beam Winter Spice.
Yep, that was actually pretty.
It was actually very good, and so I have a bottle of that on the shelf, and I think that's probably, if I scan my mental Rolodex, is probably the only Jim Beam label on my shelf. So now I'm like, well, what else am I missing out on because I've dismissed it from, again.
There are some. I do actually have a Jim Beam lineage.
Oh,
and,
okay.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
So there is they have stepped their game up a little bit, but for the most part, your rule does hold true. And going back to Jack Daniels, they've really stepped it up with a lot of their releases. They're 10 and they're 12. They're Coy Hill, they're Tanyard. Just a lot of those whiskeys coming out of there are fantastic. A lot of their ryes are really nice. So if for a long time I didn't touch anything that had Jack Daniels on the label. I'm guilty of that myself. But there is some fantastic whiskey coming out of Jack Daniels, and if for any reason you've avoided them because of Old Number 7 or because of those those normal those Jack Daniel biases, absolutely go ahead and give a shot to some of the juice that they're putting out, because there's some good stuff.
Yeah, they have a sherry cask as well.
Yep, for sure. Now for a modern craft distillery that does everything the right way, this one's close, just right down the road. New Riff Single Barrel.
Yeah, New Riff. It's in Newport, Kentucky, which is just across the river from Cincinnati, just maybe an hour from us here in the Dayton area. And it's just like a case study in transparency and quality. Everything that they produce is bottle and bond and non-chill filtered. Their single barrel high rye mash bill is 30% rye, and it's an absolute flavor bomb.
Yes. So it's fantastic. Each barrel is different, but they are consistently fantastic. You get dark fruit, some black pepper, tons of spice, bottled at cask strength, usually between 105 and 115 proof. This is a craft bottle that stands shoulder to shoulder with a lot of the bigger distilleries.
Yeah, and they have some experimental grain projects too, like we talked about Jeff the Creed with the red corn. Mm-hmm. I think you have a bottle of.
And I got that Balboa rye.
Balboa rye, yeah. So
that's a really unique one.
Yeah, they're doing some interesting stuff down there. So let's talk now. Let's shift a little bit to the quiet workhorse of the Brown-Forman repertoire.
Yep.
And almost nobody pays attention to this. We're talking about Cooper's Craft Barrel Reserve.
For sure. I think that's it's a perfect underrated pick, because for a long time I walked by and I saw it and I didn't pay much attention to it myself. But Brown-Forman is famous, of course, for their Old Forester, the Woodford Reserve, but Cooper's Craft is their kind of hidden gem.
Yeah.
And that's bottled at 100 proof, but what makes it special is the barrel process.
Yeah, exactly. The Brown-Forman is the only major distillery that makes its own barrels. And for this release, they actually chisel the inside of the barrel to expose more of the raw wood of the whiskey.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that chiseling, it creates an incredible profile. You get a ton of that toasted wood, that dark chocolate, heavy caramel, and it drinks like a much older, more expensive, like double oaked bourbon, which we love.
Yeah.
But you can usually find it sitting quietly on the shelf for like around $30.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, as much as we love Woodford double oaked for kind of similar flavor profiles, and almost $30 cheaper now.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So we're going to move on now to a rye whiskey that's been really good for so long that a lot of people don't even know about.
Sure.
You don't see it in a lot of shelves. I mean, it's starting. It's been in Ohio intermittently. We get bottles in Ohio, but we're talking about High West Double Rye.
Yep. Yeah, that's coming out of Utah. This bottle, I think it's a master class in blending. High West takes a young, vibrant rye that they distill in-house, and they blend it with much older, well-aged rye from MGP. They do source that from Indiana. The result, I think, is the best of both worlds.
Yeah, you get this like bright, kind of herbal, almost minty notes from the young rye. But it's perfectly balanced then, I think, with a rich baking spice and like a caramel and, of course, oak from the aged MGP stock. MGP, I think, gets a bad rap a lot of times, but understandably, it takes, as we've said before, and everybody knows, it takes a long time to bottle your own product.
Absolutely.
So you got to be generating income before your stock is ready. So MGP is the rock that's kind of supporting all these startups and all these different companies. So, but it's complex, it's delicious, and I think it's versatile.
I agree. Yeah. Back to MGP just a little bit. Like, we're going to get into that a little bit more in the future episodes.
Yep.
It serves a very necessary purpose. But speaking of High West specifically, I travel for work a lot, and I go out to Salt Lake City, Utah, and of course, that's where High West is, and I get High West everything, High West Old Fashions, Campfire Old Fashions, whatever. So I do enjoy partaking in that High West lineup.
With a very strict pour.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. So if you haven't been to Utah, yeah, they are very, very, very dialed in on the amount that you are allowed to have in your glass. It's 1.5 ounces of base spirit, and they have little regulators on their bottles that make sure that it can't overpour. Yep. A lot of interesting nuanced rules there for Utah. But moving on, the next bottle that we're going to talk about proves that accessible age is still out there. We've mentioned this a lot. Knob Creek 9-year. We keep bringing it up because it's such a good bottle. We recommend this one as an alternative for our Eagle Rare.
Yep.
When we, I think in episode 1, and it's just such a great whiskey. We put it in our under $50 list, and that's because we believe that this bean product just keeps delivering.
Yeah, you get a classic, the classic like peanut kind of nutty Jim Beam flavor to it. That traditional profile that everybody knows. But yet there's an added depth and complexity that only comes from spending extra years in a barrel.
Yep.
It's 100 proof, and it's readily available. It's unlike some age-stated bourbons, they're hyped up so much because of coming from, like Jim Beam again is a good example, coming from a lower lineage label maybe. That people see an age-stated thing and they automatically think it's great, or it's something that they need to chase, and sometimes they're hard to come by. But this one is they're putting out enough product that it's readily available.
Yep, which is absolutely a bonus.
Yeah, it's a fantastic value for a bourbon with verified age statement.
100%. Now let's move on to a wheated bourbon that gets, I think, unfairly overshadowed by like that Weller hype, and that's Maker's Mark Cask Strength. We touched on this one, I think it was in episode 2, and it belongs here just as much.
Yeah, it's another high proof wheated whiskey, wheated bourbon. Same kind of soft wheat forward recipe as a standard Maker's Mark, but it's bottled uncut. And usually I like around 108, something like that. Maybe I think on the high end they're around 114, 115, something like that. But strength becomes a rich, viscous, and an incredibly flavorful pour.
Yeah, it's so good. You get that signature Maker sweetness, but with a backbone of oak, baking spice, and the vanilla. That's absolutely fantastic. I'm not huge on just standard Maker's Mark, but when you get up into that cask strength, it shows what that bottle can really be, and I love it. And this is, I think, what people think they're getting when they're chase expensive Weller, but you can find it on the shelf.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So finally, a bottle that somehow often gets dismissed for being too approachable.
Ridiculous.
You may have heard us talk about this, mention this a time or two.
Just a couple times.
On the channel. We're talking Woodford Reserve Double Oaked.
So good.
It's amazing.
Love it. We mentioned this one back in episode 1 as a great alternative to E.H. Taylor. We mentioned that it didn't follow that bottled and bond act, but it was just a great alternative if you couldn't find Taylor or didn't want to pay the money for it. People that are trying too hard to be whiskey snobs or whatever, they love to hate on Woodford Double Oaked because it's so easy to like, and I don't understand that. But that's what makes it so great, because it is so approachable, it is so delicious, it's rich, it's layered, it's full of like chocolate caramel, toasted oak notes from that second barreling, and you can find it, and it's in that mid-tier range, but it's not going to break the bank. And I like to say that, like, if you told me that I could only have one bottle of bourbon that was going to be on the shelf and behind the bar or whatever, it's going to be Double Oaked. If I could only pick one, and don't do that to me, but if I had to, that's probably going to be it.
That would be it. It's also the perfect gateway bourbon.
I think so.
It's I in fact recommended it recently to a friend of mine who's just kind of getting into the hobby, and he said, "Well, I really like I had some Eagle Rare one time, and I thought it was really good, and a couple other things that he mentioned, and certain flavor notes that he said he picked up on, all of which are bold and present in Woodford Double Oak." So I told him, and especially where he's at, he's out west in a part of the country that's a little bit isolated, but I know that you can get it on the shelf fairly regularly and easily there. So I told him he's got to try it and let me know what he thinks. So again, it's the bottle that you pour someone who says that maybe they don't like bourbon that much, and I think it will instantly change their mind. Absolutely. Yeah, it's approachable, and that approachability, in our opinion, isn't a flaw. No, for sure. I think it's a feature. Yeah, it's what makes it amazing. So there you have it. That's 10 incredible underrated bottles that they're hiding in plain sight. And it just goes to show you that good bourbon isn't rare. It's often overlooked. Yeah. So in our next episode, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to go behind the label. We'll be talking about sourced whiskey, marketing myths, and the brands that aren't exactly telling you the whole truth about who distilled your bourbon. And we touched on that just a little bit, and we're going to do a deep dive. But before we go, just a reminder for both of us, good whiskey is about the experience, not the volume. So take your time, respect the proof, and sip responsibly. Cheers from Stave and Slide.